Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I messed that one all up, folks. I was already doing the show and forgot to bring us up. Welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast, folks. It's your host, Sean. It's Wednesday. I don't even know what day of the week it is. What is it? It's April 12th. We are bellying up to the bar today. I think it's kind of a fitting. I mean, we're a little bit off from the semi-national holiday. So I think Jimmy is going to be the perfect person to have one here for this upcoming semi. It's only a holiday if you're a hippie. I guess it's a hippie holiday coming up here. But we're going to be talking. We've brought with us a gentleman who I said was very influential in the rave scene. He wrote a book called The Ethical Drug Dealer. We brought with us to belly up to the bar today with us. Oh, why is all my sound equipment is messing up here, folks? I'm a mess today. Why is my equipment messing with me? There we go. We brought with us today Mr. Jimi Fritz.
Gentlemen, peace. Greetings
awesome.
from beautiful British Columbia.
So is it 80 degrees up there like it was in Albany today?
No, not quite. It's a lovely spring day, though, and the tulips are coming up, and the blossoms are out, and it looks very spring-like.
We sat down last night, my wife and my youngest son and I, and we get those big what is it? Jiffy gardens they're called, and they're just the peat moss pellets, and you put the water in, they grow.
Yeah,
we started all of our planning yesterday. So before we get too far into this, and Jimmy and I start just talking about gardening and everything else, and nothing about what we're supposed to be talking about, let's go ahead and get this thing going. As always, folks, over my right shoulder, we got the big board for Sticker and a Cause. If you got something that you believe, something you're trying to support, something you want to see happen, as always, you can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, even our email. It's all the Above the Bar podcast. You let me know what you got going on. I'll give you the address where to send that sticker. You send me a sticker, and I'll read about what you got going on live on the air for Sticker and a Cause. But maybe your media, it's still stuck in the 90s, and you're looking for somebody to bring it back up to date. Well, you want Media by Dibs. That's DIBS. You can find Dibs on Facebook at Media by Dibs, or on Instagram at Media by Dibs, or on LinkedIn at Andrew Dibble. And you let Andrew know that you're there to belly up to the bar. He's going to give you a 10% discount on your first order and a free consultation. That is Media by Dibs. All right. The bar is open, Jimmy.
All right. I'll have a pint of bitter, please.
Do you like bitter? I'm going with rye, little rye.
I'm a Crown Royale man for the hard liquor.
You know what somebody bought me? I don't like wacky liquors. And what I mean by that is years ago, somebody bought me a bottle, and I still have it sitting here next to me. Crown Maple.
Oh, yeah. Not a good idea.
Now, I just don't like.
You don't want sugar in your whiskey.
Thank you. Did you see, like, for a while there was the peanut butter whiskey that was real popular?
Yeah, not a good idea.
No, I want my whiskey to taste like whiskey. I want,
Same with beer. I grew up drinking British ale, and that's the kind of beer that I like, and it has a kind of a purity to it. There's a lot of different kinds and shades, but all these like sour beers and blueberry beer and fruit beer, that's it has no place in beer.
Have you ever heard of Ithaca, New York?
Yes, I have.
So my wife and I were up in Ithaca at Ithaca Brewing, which, if you can ever see their grounds, beautiful facility, sits on rolling hills and everything. And we're out there, and I see this thing. It says sour beer. I'm like, well, I like sour foods. I like sour candies. I'll try this. One sip, and I handed it right back to the girl, and I said,
That's horrible.
I'm like, I don't understand how people drink that shit.
I don't get it. I think they like it because it's different, and they think different is good.
Right. It's not always.
No.
It doesn't work. And we're not here to talk about beer and whiskey, but we will. We will talk about it all day, especially me. I'm drinking one of my favorites, which I got to get another bottle of either New Scotland Spirits or this one. This is one of my favorites, Whistle Pig.
Oh yeah.
6-year rye. I've decided that as much as I enjoy bourbon, I think I like ryes better.
Me too. I agree.
Yeah. I was just talking to a good acquaintance. She's on TikTok. She has a TikTok called Basic Bourbon Biatch, and she makes they do their own bourbons. Almost they grow their own bourbons. And she said she doesn't like rye. And I tried to talk to her a little bit. She goes, "I've only ever had Whistle Pig once, and I didn't like it." And I'm like, "You don't like Whistle Pig, you will never like rye. There's nothing I can do for you."
I've turned all my friends onto Crown Royal rye whiskey. With
Really
lots of
good
ice and a
rye?
dash of water, and now everybody drinks it. So when I have gatherings, I have to buy it by the gallon.
Crown
Big
has
mistake. You
rye.
should keep it to yourself if it's good.
I'll have to try. I have to look into that because I didn't know Crown had a rye. Rye's big here in New York because it's a New York grain.
Yeah. Well, it's Canadian rye whiskey is a thing too.
Interesting. Well, we have Empire Rye now
Right.
in New York, where it's everything comes from here. But we're not talking about that. So let's get into this. So Jimmy, thank you for joining us. I know we make left turns on this show all the time. Thank you for joining me, brother. I appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us tonight. If you're finding us through Jimmy, please, make sure you give us a like, follow on all our social media. If you're finding Jimmy through us,
I write books, by the way.
I was about to say, well, that's what I wanted to talk about. So
there we go.
The first one that I wanted to talk to you about was your book, Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer.
Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer by Jimi Fritz, available at fine bookstores everywhere.
And it is on Amazon. I looked up the Amazon side to it. So let's get into that one for a minute. Define an ethical drug dealer for us.
Well, an ethical drug dealer is someone that deals drugs that increases your perception and awareness of the world, and therefore enhances the quality of your life. And an unethical drug dealer is one that deals drugs that decrease your perception and awareness of the world, and therefore decrease your quality of life. In a sense, I mean, I'm talking about the psychedelics.
Gotcha.
That's these are drugs that are not. They have a very low abuse factor, because you don't do LSD every day, and you don't crave LSD, and you don't have to do it all the time. You do it once a month, or once a year, and that's the kind of drugs I'm talking about. I'm talking about psychedelics, the ones that increase your consciousness and make you see the world in wonderful new ways, and therefore improve your life.
Well, you had because when I was reading about the book, you referred to smart drugs and dumb drugs.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, like smart drugs increasing your awareness and consciousness, and dumb drugs just dumb you down and kind of anesthetize you. They're like self-medicating. Most people are doing opiates and coke and whatnot. They're trying to they're trying to mask psychological issues, especially with the opiates. They're masking psychological pain. So I don't have any psychological pain, so I don't need opiates. I don't like cocaine. I've never liked it. It just makes me feel grungy and I want to go to sleep. So it's kind of works. Yeah, it's very strange. I used to try it every couple of years, and I'd do a line just to see where I was at with it. And every time it just like gives me a kind of a low grade headache, and then it just makes me feel grungy, and I just want to curl up in a ball. So it doesn't do to me what it does to other people. Some people, it really fires them up and they feel fantastic. And if it had that effect on me, I'd probably do it more often.
So now I'm curious then, I don't know what personal research other than using psychedelics you've done, but we've had some psychedelic co-ops on here. We've had some other folks that I'm very interested. I've never done it myself. I don't think I'm a good candidate, only because I've heard too many bad trip stories and I get in my own head. That's always been my whole thing with it.
And that's very, very common. And the reason that those bad trips happen is because they do too much, and they do them at the wrong time or place. If you do it in the right time and place, under the right conditions and the right dosage, you can't have a bad trip. Now, it's not like something that can just happen, if you're in a really good state of mind and you're with some close friends and you're out in nature and you do a correct dosage, like a low dose to start with, you'll have the time of your life.
Now, one of the things because you really got me thinking right here now. Talking about, you mentioned LSD. That is my understanding when it comes to people who are able to produce it, create it. That is the great mystery of the drug world. You know, who makes it, who's producing it. There's supposedly not a ton of people on the planet still that make it. So to be able to find those folks is a challenge. So when you got into, was that one of the things when you were selling and involved in those good drugs, as you say, was that, ever a challenge for you, or did you have a direct line to it, or was it the typical, like, I had to have a plug and everything else to even get to that point?
Well, that's why I started dealing psychedelics in the first place, was because I wanted to do them and have them. And I was involved in the rave scene at the time. I have another book called Rave Culture, an Insider's Overview, which is available at fine bookstores everywhere.
Well, I was going to ask you about that one next, because I was going to ask you, when did your rave culture start? But I want to know more about the drug.
Well, I was raving regularly. I was doing MDMA, and so were all my friends. We were doing other things, just other psychedelics, and so it was important for me to get a good supply. So I was very, judicial about finding a good supplier and testing things on myself first to make sure they're all right, and then I would disseminate them to my friends. So that's how it started, with this idea that I wanted the highest quality, and to regulate it for myself and my friends, because it can be, you don't know what you're buying.
Well, think of Wavy Gravy. I always think of, that just makes me think of Wavy Gravy in the documentary about Woodstock.
Yeah.
Don't take the brown acid.
Yeah.
Stay away from the brown acid.
It's not necessarily that good, but it's your trip, man. So go ahead.
I remember that his name was Wavy Gravy.
Yes.
I might be aging myself a little bit to the fact that I knew those things. So now, you kind of, those two cultures for you, between the ethical drug dealer side and the rave culture, how did you even get in? Because we were just talking about this on our TikTok beforehand. I remember, raves back in the early 90's, to even find one, you had to know somebody who knew somebody. A flyer got handed to somebody. Then there was a little bit of the AOL messenger board kind of thing. But how did you get involved in the scene?
I was introduced by a friend of mine, actually a friend of mine's son in England. And I used to babysit this kid when he was like 6 months old and 1 year old as a baby. And then 21 years later, he showed up on my doorstep in BC. And he said, there's this new thing called Rave and blah, blah, blah. And there's this new drug called MDMA, and you should check it out. And everybody's happy and friendly, and it's a fantastic scene, and the music is excellent. So, I've been a musician all my life, so I was interested in the music. And I'd never even heard electronic dance music before. But I went to this event, and it sort of changed my life. I was 40 at the time and had never done MDMA and had never heard dance music. And it was a real eye-opener. Because I saw this new burgeoning culture full of optimism and energy and, clarity. And, it was really inspiring. It actually restored my faith in human beings. So, I embarked on a journey. I used to I went probably every weekend for 10 years, and also produced my own raves. I had an underground rave collective called SPEC. As the Society for the Perpetuation of Empathogenic Celebrations. And I'd have 300 people on an email list, and I'd find an underground location and send out the email and instructions on how to come in and how to get there. And then we'd do these fantastic events. And because it was the same people over and over again, and their friends, new people would come in, but it was basically the same core group. So it became like a really close-knit group of people. Everybody trusted each other, and everybody had these amazing transcendental, transpersonal journeys, in a group situation. It was fantastic. I mean, it was quite remarkable. I saw many, many people's lives changed, completely from then on.
How do you mean?
Mine included.
How do you mean that you saw their lives change?
Well, they'd come in and they'd be kind of, what is this and what's going on and what's happening. Some people were like a bit socially awkward, and they come from different backgrounds. But as soon as the E hit and the music crescendoed and everybody was yelling and screaming their heads off, they just look around and you could see that their minds were blown. And they had this group connection and a connection to themselves and a connection to everybody around them that they probably never had before, or never had to that degree. And you could see that it just changed them, and they were different people after that. They were better people. They knew themselves better. They were better connected to themselves and to other people.
So now we're talking, you're not saying like, hey, I was in the Raves for a year or two, or anything like that. You're saying 10 years that you were involved in this. What took you from being involved to saying that you were done with it? My 5-year-old decided to come down.
Oh, I still rave on occasion.
You can still watch yours. So you're still now. How is that? Again, I think about that scene when I was a kid, and it was like you were saying, it was warehouses. It was very, very much that underground, it was kind of like, what's the best? What made it great was that you weren't supposed to be doing it, or you were in a place that you weren't supposed to be. How was that changed? Now, you say you still do it today. How was that scene changed today?
There's still an underground scene in many places. There still is in BC, in various places. The people do, hit and run parties. They do parties in the bush, in the woods. There's still warehouse parties, where they'll just rent a place under false pretenses and just, do a one-nighter. It still happens, not to the same degree. It's much more fractured now. It's not as unified a scene. It used to be, but it was unified with the music and MDMA in particular. Now it's kind of more, there's a lot more coke, there's a lot more K, there's a lot more, these other drugs that kind of throw out the integrity. And the music's become fractured too.
What do you mean?
All the raves were pretty much progressive house and trance at one time.
Yes.
And that's the type of music that really creates this momentum, really creates this unity, and everybody can kind of click into that beat. Now there's a lot of forms that are not that danceable. So people are there for different reasons. There's still a healthy sort of social scene, but it doesn't have that kind of transcendental power that the original rave scene had. So that has pretty much passed, I think.
Almost like it's diluted a little bit. It's diluted with other things or other people that wanted to be involved in it. But wasn't that the rave scene though? Is bringing all these people that were looking for a new scene to be part of, because it kind of popped up as almost the anti-grunge, I guess, or the anti-alt scene is the way I always saw it. Like if you were into alt rock, grunge, Nirvana, world, and you didn't have, those weren't danceable songs unless you were looking for violence. And then all of a sudden this rave scene, which is very much a much more energetic, positive, bouncing around. I can still remember my favorite rave beat ever was based on Doctor Who, and somebody used the Doctor Who music. You probably know what I'm talking about, which, look, you even smiled when I said it, Jimmy. You know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that sampling going on, and that was what was so great about the music. It was taking from everywhere, from past, present, and future, and making this synthesis. It was the first time that really happened in music. There was kind of some world beat, but this was the first time that it was actually, they were taking samples from, speeches and everywhere and anywhere, like computer game noises to, to the Martin Luther King speech, to Doctor Who, to, whatever. Everything was fodder. Everything went into the mix and included everything and everybody. That's one of the reasons it was so unifying.
And it sounds like you experienced the English rave scene, the Canadian rave scene, and the US. Is that correct?
Yeah, to some degree. Yeah. Mostly Canadian, but we went to the States for some big parties too.
So I'm gonna be that guy for a moment. Who does it better?
Who does it better? Well, I mean, it's different in different places, right?
Well, what's the difference is that?
Well, it's different if you're dancing at a party in Goa in India, with the coconut palms and the beaches and and you've got a Psy trance outfit from Japan or Russia playing for 12 hours straight at 140 beats a minute, or
Wow.
you're in California and it's all, clothes and big hats and candy, all the way up the arms. And, it's just a different flavor everywhere you go. But it's the essence of it is pretty similar. It's just about this group mind experience. That's what people are going for.
So, with all these, obviously, all these experiences that you had throughout that scene and what you had throughout your life, and I'm going to ask you an early question here because I'm curious where, you said you got into this at age 40.
Yeah.
Before then, what were you into psychedelics? Were you into a party scene before then? Or was it kind of like, I'm 40 years old, I've been a banker for the last,
No,
20
no,
years. Where were you at before that?
no. I I was a grade 10 dropout, and then I started traveling the world, and I was traveling around Europe, busking and playing guitar in the street, and experimented with hashish and LSD, and at a very early age. I tell that's the I call it a psychedelic travelogue and memoir, and that's the it's like my journeys geographically and psychologically told through the lens of doing psychedelics in different places. So yeah, it's been I've been into psychedelics since I was 15,
Wow. And folks,
and I'm 67 now, so it's 52 years.
good God. Look, if you're not watching the live, if psychedelics can keep you looking as young as Jimmy does right now, it might be something to it. And if you're
That's right.
interested in what he's got going on, besides all your Amazon and everything, you can check his website out. It's Jimmy, Jimi Fritz, FRITZ.ca because it's in Canada. So it's Jimmy, JIMI FRITZ.ca for Canada. Go check it out. So you were in that world, 15 years old, coming up through it, getting involved. So you knew it. So it was really the rave culture was a culture that you had been looking for, it sounds like, for a long time.
Yeah, well, it was, there were different scenes at different times. Like, there was a lot of this going on in the 60s.
Yes.
There were love-ins and be-ins. They were really proto-raves. It's all part of the same progression. Rave culture came out of the free party scene in England. There was a scene going on in England in the early 80s, and it was called the free party scene, where people would set up in a field and they'd set up a sound system and they'd play like psychedelic rock and Grateful Dead, and people would do mushrooms and acid and dance all night in the cow field. And so that was happening. And then in Ibiza, they were playing house music, and that came around in 83, 84. So they started playing house music, which was again an evolution from disco through new style disco into rave music. So that was happening, and those two things joined up in England in the Summer of Love. It's 87, and the rave scene just exploded. It was a synthesis between the dance music and the free party scene, and that underground party scene, and then MDMA. And those three things came together, and that's what started the rave scene. Then it migrated to the east coast of the US, and then the west coast, and then everywhere.
Now you just said something very interesting. In the States, we would call the summer of love as the summer of 69 is the summer of love.
Yeah.
They have that same reference in England, but they refer to 1987
Right.
as the summer of love.
Interesting. Yeah, it was the second summer of love, because it was another explosion of culture, art, and sexuality, and it's a social phenomenon. It's a similar kind of social phenomenon as the 60s.
I've never heard that before. That's really, a very eye-opening idea to think about that, because I get what you're saying, and I have to. I get corrected. It's such an interesting. So you say Ibiza, I say Ibiza.
Yeah,
and I've partied there. Listen to me, folks, and I'm going to ask Jimmy to verify. Have you partied there before, Jimmy?
I haven't. No.
Okay. I will promise you, folks, you've partied anywhere you want to in the world. You have never on God's green earth partied like they do in Ibiza, whatever you want to call it. It is a different animal. It is a level of wealth that people don't normally understand that can go on there, but you might have somebody that's on a $15,000, $20,000 1 week vacation right next to somebody that hitched a ride on the back of a dolphin to just get over to that island.
Yeah. What
And
year were you there?
I was in Ibiza 1997.
Okay, yeah.
And we started off at this place called the Bull Bar. I still have somewhere a flyer from it. And it was a bar in the middle of Spain. For those who don't know where it is, this is an island off the coast of Spain, Ibiza, Majorca, Palma. And everyone there is English, Irish, or Scottish, and a little bit of French. And I'll never forget, we were in the middle of a bar with a mechanical bull in an island in Spain, and you could ride the bull and all that. And they did all this wild stuff, and a bunch of young Marines. And we met these girls that were from an organization that supplied nannies for the wealthy people that were on the island vacationing. So they would get done and we would hang out. And you'll appreciate the story I'm going to tell you, Jimmy. I was hanging out with this young lady. One of the Marines that was with me came over. He was hammered like a dry cat turd. He was so drunk. And she had her friend with her, and she looked at me and she goes, "He is just pissed, isn't he?" And I'm like, "He looked pretty fucking happy to me." I didn't know the English term of pissed as pissed drunk.
Right.
I'm thinking she's talking about pissed in the States would be you're mad about something, you're pissed off. And that was my first true experience in learning phrasing from different areas. But Ibiza, that's where the bubble party started, was in Ibiza. They started that whole thing.
Yeah, well, that started out as like a rave scene, and then it kind of morphed into this super club scene. So the super club thing with the bubbles, and that wasn't really, that was an evolution, into the clubs of rave culture, because it went to different places and did different things. But the real rave culture was, started on the beaches there, started in all night dance parties on the beaches. And it was only later that it went into the clubs, and then it became the super club capital of the world.
Oh, it's crazy. Now, this is important. Our friend Nate, and those who don't know it, Nate's going to be on here next week. If everything works out, folks, we'll see. We might have a guest host because I might be away next week. We'll see. But Nate is asking, did you have a favorite go-to rave party food? Like after the night was over, like this is what you needed, or even midday?
Party food. I don't know. You don't get very hungry on E if you've been, if you've done 6 hits of E during the evening.
You're hungry.
You go home unless you go to the after party and do some LSD and go through the next day. Then by the time you sleep, you're not thinking about eating. But the next day afterwards, you want something carby. So bit of French fries and something substantial.
Jimmy, I got to ask you: I got to ask that question. You're just kind of admit it. Have you dropped E, ran through the night, and then dropped acid afterwards just to keep going?
Yeah, every weekend for a number of years. Because when I was throwing the parties, of course, I'd have to start early in the morning, and we'd have to set up the party and set up the sound and set up the environment and decorate it and get the volunteers, and then we'd start the party at 9 or 10 o'clock, and then we go all night till 7 o'clock in the morning. At 7 o'clock in the morning, we pack it all up, pack up the gear, sweep the place out, clean it with some volunteers. Then we go to the after party. And then at the after party, you'd either do a little bit more E or you do some LSD, and then party through that day and then go to sleep, early the next evening. That was sort of the pattern. I did that for years. I couldn't do it now. I'm definitely past that now.
You'd have to peel me off the floor.
Yeah, I don't know how I did it either. When I look back on some of those weekends, it was like, I don't know. I don't know where I got that energy from. I don't have it anymore. I'm like, I'm out of gas now.
Look, Nate
But
said
there
the
was a
same thing.
time when it was glorious.
Just hearing you say it, we both need a nap just listening to you.
I know, me too. Yeah.
I mean, so I guess you've got the books, you've got rave culture, you've got gosh, why is my brain not working? The ethical
Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer.
I don't know why the word confession wasn't
A
coming to mind.
psychedelic travelogue and memoir available at fine bookstores everywhere.
So what what prompted you to kind of stop and say, "Hey, I'm going to put this down"? Like, was there? Hey, you
I
were
was exhausted.
you were you were just tired,
shagged out,
like
completely shagged out.
So, I mean, were you taking notes through this? Like, you had the stuff written down, or did you have to kind of remember what was going on? Because I'm thinking here, like, you're telling me you were higher than a hot air balloon this whole time. How do you remember what was going on at these times?
That's very vivid, actually. I mean, I think if anything, MDMA improves your memory, because you have your experience is that much more intense, and so it lodges in your long-term memory better. But yeah, I wrote after I'd been into it for a few years. I thought, well, this is fantastic. I should tell the world, because it was pretty much underground. Nobody knew it was going on, and I thought it was like one of the greatest cultural movements of the 20th century. So I wrote the Rave culture book because I wanted to kind of let people know what was going on.
Now MDMA. I want to stay with that for a second. If I remember my teachings correctly, MDMA originally created by German scientists for troops to keep them up and keep them going. When
Not exactly, but
no,
close.
okay, correct.
It was first patented by the Merck Corporation, which is the German pharmaceutical corporation.
I know Merck. Yep.
And they were looking into a kind of a blood pressure medication, and they synthesized MDMA, didn't really know what to do with it, and just kind of shelved it. That was 1917.
Okay.
Sometime in the 40s, I think the US looked at it as a kind of a, mind control drug or whatever. And they thought that it might be useful for something, but they didn't find anything useful for it. They dropped it. And then Alexander Shulgin, who was a research chemist from Dow Chemicals, he had made a pesticide for them, which they were very pleased with and made a fortune on it. So they gave him a research laboratory, said you can do what you want. Well, he was interested in magic mushrooms and the benzene ring. So he started looking at creating psychedelic compounds, which he did. And he ended up creating over 300 unique psychedelic compounds, some of which have never really been tested yet. Some of them leaked out. 2CB is one of his.
Oh, what's that?
2CB, it's a hallucinogenic. It's a bit of a wild ride. It caught on in California for a while. But he was the guy that found this old patent and resynthesized MDMA. And he was doing it with his wife, and they thought, this stuff really has some potential. So he started to give it out to his psychologist and psychiatrist friends. And he was at the center of this large group of therapists. They started using it for relationship counseling and anxiety disorders, and in their psychiatric and psychological practices, and found that they could do more on a couple of MDMA sessions than you could do with years and years of conventional therapy. So it caught on, and it was being used by hundreds or even thousands of therapists all across the US until it became illegal, because it burst onto the dance scene in Dallas and blah, blah, blah. And then it was Schedule 1 drug by the FDA. And so then a lot of those therapists carried on underground, and but a lot of them quit because they didn't want to lose their licenses.
Right. You don't want to get in trouble for something like that.
So, yeah. And then it's only now that it's becoming, there was a organization called the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, called MAPS, started by a guy called Rick Doblin, who about 27 years ago, he started looking into MDMA as a therapeutic drug. So they did studies for PTSD. Well, it's been It's been 25 years of studies now, and he's just on the brink. It's expected to be a prescription medication for PTSD within the next year or two. And they've been saying within the next year or two for a while, but it will happen because it is at the final stages of approval.
And look, I've said it on here 1,000 times. I think psychedelics are the correct answer for anything as far as antidepressants, PTSD, those type of things. Only because I have very close family members that have done the other stuff that's out there that they give people that you have built into your system. You can't just come off of it because it could kill you coming off of it. And everyone I've known that's done psychedelics, mushrooms, no matter what it is, they all say the exact same thing. They did one or two, and you can correct me on this, Jimmy, like sessions or rounds or whatever they call it, from a medical standpoint. And when it's over with, they're good. I've never talked to anyone who had to do more than two, like.
Some of the MAP studies are getting like 80% cure rates. So these are people, and the people that they chose to do the studies with are the hardest core people. So these are people that their lives were absolutely unbearable. They were suicidal. They tried every therapy, they tried every drug, and they were just at the suicide level, and they went into these studies, and up to 80% of these people and now do not have a PTSD diagnosis. So that's pretty amazing. That's it's unheard of in the drug world for a drug to be that effective for that. So it's effective for that, and it remains to be seen what else it is effective for. But that's it's taken a long time to get to this point. But so it will be a prescription medication pretty soon.
That's wild. And folks, if you're just jumping in with us on the live here, and again every Wednesday 8 p.m. If you want to check out what Jimmy's got going on, he's got Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer is one book he's written. The other one is Rave Culture. You can check his website at Jimi, Jimi Fritz, FRITZ.ca. Or if you go on Amazon, they're located there. Absolutely, Nate. That's what I was going to say. Power of Nature. Well, somebody recently told me the right term, and I always forget it. You might know it. And I was curious if you subscribe to this mindset of how mushrooms are why humans are at the level of evolution we are today. It's this idea that the hunter-gatherer society,
stoned ape theory.
Stoned ape. There you go. Thank you.
Terence McKenna came up with that. I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that really.
So you don't think that that's a.
Well, I've never seen any evidence that suggested that was true. It's just another fanciful idea from Terence McKenna.
No, I don't know much about Terence McKenna. I don't know much of what's going on there, but I think it's interesting the idea that hunter gatherers were like, well, if I eat this one, it's going to make me smell colors. And if I
that's what psilocybin originally evolved to do, was to prevent you from eating the plant. It's a toxin, basically. It was evolved in the plant to prevent it being eaten.
Right. So it's the plant itself could survive.
Yeah, and it may just be a secondary, coincidental effect that it turns our brains on. It rewires our brain, basically. It just makes you think in a different way, and that can be really useful.
Now, with all these different ones, Jimmy, I'm coming to you as the expert, brother, because I've never done any of them. How do these? Well, thank you, my love. My wife says I look good. Are you talking to me, Pep, or are you talking to Jim?
No, she's talking to me, I think.
She might be talking to you, Jim. I know my wife. She's probably talking to you. So what I wanted to know is, with all these different, we've talked about LSD, we talked about psilocybin, MDMA, all these different ones. How do you, like, if you were going to, I guess if for you as somebody who's well versed in them. How do you explain these? Or if somebody said to you, "Hey, I'm looking for this," or "I'm dealing with this," and listen, folks, we're not doctors, we're not pharmacists, we're not telling you this is correct. We're just telling you his personal experiences in dealing with these. How do you like? Did you maybe that's a better question. Did you self medicate when you knew something was going on to say, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with"?
No, I've never self-medicated. I mean, I've never done psychedelics for therapeutic purposes. I've never
Okay,
done them to solve a psychological problem because I've had very little of that. I've
gotcha.
always felt just fine. So
No, Jimmy.
and I mean, they are very effective, and they can be. I've seen people's lives transformed through psychedelic drug use, and people that had problems and they did microdosing psilocybin or microdosing LSD, and now they don't have those problems, and that's fantastic, and I'm all for that. But personally, I use them I use them because I enjoy them, because it inspires me. It inspires the way I think. It makes me more creative. I think it makes my life a lot more interesting.
I bet.
So it makes other people more interesting. So yeah, no, I haven't really used them therapeutically or to medicate.
I was and now. I'm sorry for a moment. Say he's just popped in. Say
Oh,
hello.
hi,
Mr. Jimmy can't hear you because I got my
hello.
earbuds in. You can't hear him because I've got my earbuds in. But are you going to go finish? We had a special guest for those of you that are not watching the live. Lucas decided to come downstairs and say hello. All right, watch the glasses underneath there. You good? You gonna go finish watching your show?
I have two sons.
Okay.
One is 38 and one is 40 now.
We range from age 29 to 5, and there's 8 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, we have he has nieces and nephews older than him.
Wow.
So okay, you good? All right, you got to go, bud. No. Yes, go on. Let Daddy finish what he's doing. All right, see ya. Go watch your show. And my wife did say, Jimmy, she was talking about you.
I know. Yeah, I've felt it. Yeah.
I look. I expected nothing less. And thank you, Nate. My beard is looking good today. I did go see I saw the barber today. Now, Nate brings this up. Were you ever into the weed scene at all, or was that more like,
Yeah,
like,
I outlined my adventures in weed in Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer. I mean, the first drug I smoked was hashish when I was 15.
You went right for it.
So that was the beginning of my psychedelic journey, and that's one of the first stories in the book. And then it goes all the way through. But yeah, I used to grow marijuana. I grew marijuana for about 15 years, and did quite well at it. Grew some
Why'd you stop? Why'd you stop growing it?
It was a lot of work, and also at some point, because there was so much pot around, it was you could make as much money buying pounds and selling ounces as you could growing it. So it became more and more expensive to go, and it's a lot of work. You can't. It doesn't just grow itself. You got to keep on it. You got to be there every day, and so it's kind of intensive. But I had a good time doing it for as long as I did it. I did it for about 15 years and quit, and that was like probably 25 years ago.
Oh wow!
And I grew in North Carolina for a while with a friend of mine, and we were guerrilla farming. So we had these patches all around Asheville, North Carolina.
I know Asheville.
Yeah, we had 6 patches. Remember, the Billy Graham Center there?
Okay.
Well, one of our patches was called the Billy Graham patch because it was on their land in the woods.
Look, God made these plants. Billy can't be mad about that.
I know.
Well, I have an aunt that used to live, actually lives in Asheville right now. And look, the college up there, which is Appalachian State, their mascot looks like what's his name from the Grateful Dead?
Jerry Garcia.
He looks like Jerry Garcia. So you can't be mad at any group like that. So we're getting ready. We'll be closing the bar up here shortly there, Jimmy. But I wanted to ask you, so have you done any speaking tours with this book, anything like that?
I did quite a lot of podcasts for Confessions.
Okay.
And I'll be doing a lot more podcasts because I got a new book coming out next week.
What's coming out?
A new novel. It's called The End of Everything. And it's about a guy in a mental asylum. It's about a character called Fritz, who's in a mental asylum plotting his own suicide. And he's ranting about the world and what's wrong with it. Sitting at a typewriter.
Like old school, straight up keyboard, typewriter.
Yeah.
And
it's in an ambiguous time frame. It might be in Russia or an Eastern Bloc country. It's kind of Kafka-esque, Dostoevsky, Herman Hesse type thing.
I loved it.
With a dash of Vonnegut and Tom Robbins, maybe.
It's a lot of different writing styles there, but I love the idea of like sitting there ranting about the world, plotting your own suicide in a place that is there to prevent you from doing exactly that thing.
Yeah, that liable to make you think of it more.
Right, liable to make you think of it, designed to prevent you from doing it while you're sitting with a keyboard planning it.
Yeah, that's sort of what I do anyway.
That's interesting.
So what I sit around typing and ranting about the world and thinking about suicide.
Now, one of the things I notice is you don't really have a social media presence, like no Instagram. I didn't really. I saw some Facebook things. Any particular reason by that, or was it just my failure?
I was on Instagram for a short time, and it just drove me crazy. I just thought it was a complete waste of time. It was completely devoid of any content or purpose or meaning, or there was nothing there for me. It was just fluff. It's all just superficial fluff. I didn't see anything worthwhile in it, so I canceled. It took me hours and hours to cancel that. You try and cancel an Instagram account.
Really?
I get all these Google workarounds, and it took hours and hours, but I finally nuked it and obliterated it. And TikTok, is even worse, I think. TikTok is even more vacuous and devoid of any content. So, I have no interest in those platforms at all. They're just distractions in life. They don't give you anything. They just suck you dry.
Well, it's funny you bring up TikTok. I was just talking with some friends. I don't know how much of the U.S. news you're following, but they're trying to ban TikTok here in the States.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
What's so funny to me is their logic, though. We need to ban TikTok because they could influence the election, and they could be collecting our information, and they could be like basically Chinese spies. And it makes me laugh because I go, you guys realize there's like 5 major media companies on the entire planet that control everything we see, hear, and ingest. You guys are just pissed that this one you don't have control of, and now you're mad about the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, do we need more social media platforms or less? I don't know. If we're going to ban one, I'd take out TikTok and Instagram and do away with those. I think we'd be better off without, especially young people. I think they'd be a lot better off without them.
Well, that's that whole thing about how when they take Instagram away from kids and have them like really truly detached from it, their self-worth changes, and they see more of a higher value in themselves as a person. Nate says we need more. Nate, I just need more so that people can find this show and listen to it. That's the only reason I need it. That's my whole point for it is, are you coming on and watching the show and everything? So,
well, if the content is there, then, it's worthwhile, right? It's just a medium. It's the content, but some of these platforms just seem to be, there's no content. That's what I found with Instagram. I'm just going swipe, just nothing. There's just nothing on there.
You were just drawn into it. Just
you're drawn in, even though there's nothing there. It's weird. But
No,
yeah, they're addictive, and they're, you know, predicated on this algorithm that's trying to, you know, create drama and conflict. And I don't think that, especially for young people, I think they're really destructive.
no, I could definitely see that. Uh, Nate and I put out a ton of content. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, Nate? It's an interesting point, though, that social media is just the opposite of, you could almost say, for what Jimmy is interested in, good drugs and bad drugs, depending upon the person and what they're doing with it. Social media is that good drug or bad drug.
Yeah.
How do you ingest it? How do you process it? Like we were joking about the brown acid from the documentary. Are you processing it properly? Is it produced properly? Is it coming to you in a way that's benefiting you, or is it coming to you in a way that you're going, I'm having a bad trip, the lamppost is talking to me about, Mein Kampf or some crazy shit like that. It's an interesting outlook you got there, Jimmy. So anything you got coming up, any events, anything where people could watch you? I know they should watch this podcast thousands upon thousands of times over and over and over, but anything you got coming up?
Not specifically, and I'll be doing more podcasts coming up about when my book is. I'm going to get copies on Tuesday,
Okay.
and then I do a final kind of typo run, and then it'll be published on Amazon and Ingram Spark and Google Books and Apple Books and everywhere you can find books on the internet.
And what's
So
the name of the new book?
The end of everything.
The end of it. So the end of everything is the new book.
Yeah,
They can obviously still find Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer
yeah.
and Rave Culture. All, and folks, again, that's Jimmy Jimi Fritz Fritz .ca. You can find all of his stuff there, and you've got the music career. I have to tell you, the one time you're standing on the cover page of your personal web page, very Roy Orbison-esque, that
Oh
post.
yeah, it's the black and white one.
The black and white one. I was like, it had a very Andy Kaufman meets Roy Orbison kind of vibe to it.
Oh yeah.
I think that makes sense to you, because you definitely were holding the guitar like a Roy Orbison kind of vibe, but
Yeah.
because of your shorter hair and everything, had a
Right.
very Andy Kaufman look to it.
That's a still from a music video, and there's 24 music videos on my site of original songs. There's also 5 albums you can download for free. There's also a number of movies and shorts that I've made as a filmmaker. So there's a one-stop shopping for your entertainment needs.
I mean, Jimmy, you're a super, super creative person. And we've got a couple minutes left. Where do you think that creative vibe comes from? Were you a creative kid? I mean, you've got so much. I mean, even the drugs that you're talking about doing are not zombie drugs that I would call, like, where, like,
No.
you did creative drugs that normally people would associate with that. Where does that
Yeah,
come
well,
from?
I think that smart drugs have increased my engagement in the world and my creativity. I think it has been enhanced by psychedelics, and that's the main reason that I use them. I guess is to stimulate the mind. Plus,
But I
I've
mean,
done a lot of traveling and a lot of reading, and those things kind of stimulate creativity too, I think.
were you a creative kid, and somebody tried to hold that down, or was it just the opposite? You were always told to keep being creative.
No, I had a horrible time at school. I had a very bad school experience and I just kind of, put my head down and try to get through it. But as soon as I left school at 15 and I went traveling, that everything changed. That's when I started my life, really. I didn't get anything from school at all.
No, just the
Complete
ability
waste
to
of
read.
time. Yeah.
But see, I don't disagree. I'm a very you said 10th grade. I've said it for a long time. I believe that most schooling should stop at 10th grade, and then let people determine what's right for them. If they're
Yeah.
a college mindset, let them supply something for prep school and then go off to college. If
Right.
they're a trades mindset, set them up for trades and then go on. Don't keep pushing the same narrative for every single person, because it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And it just, yeah, I felt like I, could have left a couple of years earlier and been better off. But, that's okay. I made up for lost time.
What was it? And this, God, Jimmy, you have such a fascinating life. I want to know about the travels. We only got a couple minutes. Any particular place that
in this book, there's 50 years of travels. There's 24 different countries.
And that's Confessions of an Ethical
many psychedelic experiences.
And that's Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer. I haven't read the book yet, but I got to.
Well, you're in for a treat.
In India, did you make it to India?
Yes.
Did you have hashish in India?
Yes, hashish and.
What was that? I got to ask, what was that like, hashish in India? Because
they have good hashish. Yeah, it mostly comes from Nepal, but yeah, there's lots of good hashish, and they make cakes with it and cook with it, and so they smoke it in chillums, great chillums with scarves wrapped around them, and they go boom Shiva Shankar, great clouds of smoke.
What is
very
that?
Dramatic.
Wait a sec. I don't even know what that means. What does all that mean?
It's all about smoking hashish.
Like, hold on, you just opened a whole world. So
we can do another hour on chillums.
Tell me what a chillum is, because I don't know what a chillum is.
Chillum is a conical shaped piece of wood. It's like just a straight pipe, basically, and then you pack it on the top, and then you wrap a wet rag around the bottom, and you put it in your mouth, and then you light the top, and just smoke mass quantities of hashish in a very short period of time.
Wow. That's wild. Like, I didn't even, and I don't know enough about it. Again, I've watched a little bit, but hashish is it a derivative of marijuana? Yes, no?
Yeah, it's the resin of the marijuana plant. It's marijuana, yeah.
So, but it's like
concentrated form, because it's most of the THC is in the resin, and when you take that off and press it and then smoke that, it's much more concentrated than just smoking grass.
Jimmy, I didn't even know that was a thing. What you just talked about, a chillum and everything.
Yeah,
you just opened my mind to a whole new world. Like, that's some shit I ain't never even heard of.
All right.
Like, see, look at that. I didn't have to do any psychedelics, and my mind was open.
Exactly. There you go. You just have to talk about psychedelics to open your mind.
That's it.
Fantastic. And it's free.
Completely. Look, folks.
What a good deal.
If I've not taught you anything over all these episodes, there is so much there. Hendrix was Hendrix was LSD. They always said Hendrix we used to put dabs of acid under his headband, and from the
I don't know if that's true. Maybe
that was always the story.
Everybody thought Jimi Hendrix was on LSD constantly because he played like he was on LSD. Yeah. But I think he just could play like that anyway.
Yeah, the guy was. Well, most Americans don't realize that Jimi Hendrix was huge in France and overseas.
Yeah. Well, he made it first in England. I mean, he made it in England first, and then he came back to America as already a hit.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until he played the national anthem at Woodstock that people kind of went, that dude's pretty awesome.
A lot of people thought he was awesome before that, but that was a high point for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about in the States. Most people in the States just didn't have the right understanding of his music. So Jimmy, we're going to get ready to close the bar up here. Folks, look.
Okay.
Go check out jimifritz.ca, and that's JIMIFRITZ.ca. Everybody needs to order 100 copies each of Confessions of the Ethical Drug Dealer. Everyone needs 100 copies of Rave Culture, and the new book. One more time, Jimmy.
The End of Everything.
The new
coming
book.
To a bookstore near you soon. Any minute now.
Any minute. Like, if you go tonight to like a Barnes and Noble and camp out front of the Barnes and Noble, you can get the first copy of it.
No, it won't be available online until probably another month.
Well, I guess you're asked out, folks. But you have to wait a month.
Wait a month and look everywhere. It's going to be everywhere.
And I just love
it's going to go viral.
I love the concept. Now, folks, again, if you're finding Jimmy through us, make sure you give us a like, follow, share. I can't explain to everyone enough. Listen, that rating that you give us on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever media you found us through, that rating you give us, that follow you give us, is how Jimmy's story gets out. That's how Jimmy's books get found. That's how people see what he's got going on and make it important. And same thing here with all the different guests that we have on and all the different things we have happening. So make sure you give us a like, follow, share. That is of value to us. Again, every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the show. Make sure you're joining us. Next week, we're talking paranormal. That's a whole nother thing, Jimmy.
That's a whole other thing.
Jimmy, my equipment breaks every time.
Don't get me started on the paranormal.
Oh, you make sure you join us next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Come listen.
Okay.
You can interact with us live.
I'll make comments.
Please make comments, because that's what my equipment ends up breaking every time I have somebody on with paranormal. And our friend Nate, who was asking some questions, Nate has actually gotten into some ghost hunting, and he's with the Paranormal Funhouse.
I bet he never found a ghost.
I don't know. I have to ask him.
Nobody ever found a ghost yet.
It's well, at least nobody's ever had.
Not in the history of the world, just that.
I found him. That's a whole nother story. So don't log off on me, Jimmy.
Okay.
I got to talk to you for just a moment after the show.
All right.
We have one thing, and I know you've listened to all 170 some episodes. So
that's all I do.
That's all you do. I understand that. So this is one of the things we do with every one of our guests. The guest always gets the final word on every episode. What is the final word from you, Jimmy?
The final word is be nice to each other.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation, found on earplugpodcast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.